He was the kind of man who ruled boardrooms like a battlefield. Cold, sharp, and ruthless. Billionaire CEO Leon Hart never heard the word no without crushing the person who dared say it. In his world, everything came with a price, and everyone had a role: to obey, to follow, or to disappear. With his perfectly tailored suits, dark sunglasses, and permanent scowl, Leon wasn't just powerful, he was untouchable. Or at least, that's what he thought. But fate, as always, had other plans, and this time, it came wearing combat boots and a wild smile. The story began on a rainy Tuesday night. Leon was in the middle of making one of the biggest deals of his career, something that could change the entire future of his company. A quick flight, a short stopover, and a private car. That's all it was supposed to be. But the moment he stepped outside the airport terminal, something felt off. His usual driver was nowhere in sight. Instead, an old beat-up van screeched to a halt in front of him. And before he could process what was happening, the door flew open. A young woman leaned out, her messy ponytail swinging, and yelled, "Get in, pretty boy! No time to explain." Leon blinked. Excuse me. That was the last thing he remembered clearly before the world turned dark. Thanks to a sharp jab to his neck and a van full of chloroform-scented blankets. When he came to, his wrists were tied, his Armani jacket was missing, and the woman from the van was sitting across from him, legs crossed, eating instant noodles like she hadn't just abducted a billionaire. Her name? Skylar Kane, a 26-year-old woman with no known address, a fake ID, and a temper that could burn buildings. She wasn't just reckless. She was unpredictable, unfiltered, and slightly unhinged. But there was something about her that felt too intentional to be chaotic. She didn't want money. She didn't want ransom. In fact, she didn't seem interested in who Leon was at all. And that infuriated him. "What do you want from me?" he demanded on the first night, voice hoarse from the damp basement where she'd stashed him. She didn't even look up. "You'll find out," she muttered, slurping her noodles. Leon had never felt so humiliated, or so intrigued. Day one, he tried threats. He promised lawyers, lawsuits, and police raids. Skylar laughed in his face. Day two, he tried reasoning. "You're throwing away your life. Just tell me what you want." She threw him a granola bar and said, "You look hungry." By the third day, something began to shift. He stopped shouting. She stopped mocking. They started talking. Turns out, Skylar wasn't just some random girl off the street. She knew things. About him, about his company, about a scandal Leon thought was buried years ago. And slowly pieces started to fall into place. Her older brother used to work for HeartCorp, a whistleblower, a man who mysteriously vanished after exposing illegal offshore deals. Leon had never heard his name, but Skylar had never forgotten. This wasn't about money. It was about revenge. And yet, something wasn't right. Skylar had the perfect opportunity to destroy him. And yet she didn't. She cooked for him. She patched up a cut on his hand after he broke a glass in frustration. She even gave him a clean shirt, though it was 2 sizes too big, and Leon, for reasons he couldn't explain, started looking forward to hearing her footsteps on the stairs. By night 5, the two of them were sitting side by side, watching old reruns on a dusty TV. Leon had stopped trying to escape. Skylar had stopped locking the door. "I thought you'd be a monster," she said quietly. "I wanted to hate you." "Maybe you still should," Leon replied. But his voice wasn't as cold as it used to be. Somewhere between the shouting and silence, the lines blurred. Was it Stockholm Syndrome? Or was Skylar starting to see the cracks in his armor? The way he clenched his jaw when he talked about his father. The way his hands shook when she mentioned the whistleblower's name. And Leon, he wasn't sure anymore what scared him more, being tied up in a stranger's basement, or the way he felt when Skylar looked at him like he wasn't just a CEO, but a man. On the 7th night, the storm outside was loud enough to shake the windows. Skylar stood at the door, holding the keys. "You're free," she said. "I got what I needed." Leon stood up, staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "That's it." She nodded. "I never planned to hurt you." He should have walked out, called the police, called his team, gone back to his high-rise life with champagne meetings and marble floors. But he didn't move. "What did you get from me?" he asked. Skylar hesitated. Her voice was almost a whisper. "The truth. And maybe something else I didn't expect." Their eyes met, and just like that, everything hung in the air. Unsaid, uncertain, unfinished. Because what started as a kidnapping was turning into something else entirely. And both of them knew that whatever came next wasn't going to be simple. So what happened when the coldest billionaire met the wildest girl on earth? And why did a man who had everything suddenly feel like he'd found the one thing he'd been missing? Stay tuned, because what happens after night 7 will leave you breathless, and nothing will ever be the same again. Leon didn't leave that night. He stood at the door, keys in hand, staring at the wild-haired girl who had once tied him up and now looked just as lost as he felt. Skylar turned away first, pretending to busy herself with cleaning up the crumbs on the table, but her hands were shaking. For the past 7 nights, they had lived in their own strange world, between fear and forgiveness, anger and something dangerously close to care. And now that it was supposed to end, neither of them knew what came next. Leon's life was waiting. Outside, his board of directors probably thought he was dead. His phone had been buzzing non-stop until it died on day 3. There were headlines out there calling it a possible kidnapping, even whispers of inside sabotage. But here he was, alive, with the one person who should have been his enemy, yet felt more like someone he didn't want to lose. Skylar hadn't planned for this. The original idea was simple. Shake up the arrogant CEO. Make him feel the fear her brother had felt before vanishing. Get the answers she couldn't find in court documents and buried emails. But Leon hadn't reacted the way she thought he would. He didn't play the heartless villain. He didn't scream about revenge or try to buy his way out with bribes and insults. Instead, he listened. He asked about her brother. He admitted things, like the fact that HeartCorp's former CFO had covered up several internal scandals, all behind Leon's back. And when he said he genuinely didn't know about Skylar's brother, she believed him. Or at least, she wanted to. Still, the truth wasn't enough, because while Leon might have been innocent of one crime, his company was guilty of many. Families had lost jobs. Skylar's brother had spoken out and disappeared without a trace. That pain didn't just go away with soft looks and awkward conversations. As Leon sat down beside her again, silence filled the room, heavy and loaded. "Skylar," he said quietly, "if you think I can fix this, I'll try." She didn't answer right away. Because how do you trust someone who spent years on the other side of the world from you? Someone who never had to fight for rent, or sleep in a car, or spend 2 years searching for answers in locked databases. But she looked at him and saw something real. A man tired of pretending, tired of being cold and perfect. Then came the knock. It was late. The storm still pounded outside. Skylar froze, her face draining of color. "No one knows we're here," she whispered. Leon stood slowly, motioning for her to stay back. Another knock, then a voice. "Mr. Hart, we know you're inside." Skylar's heart dropped. It was Leon's head of security, Tyrell Vance, a man known for doing more than just protecting the company. Rumor had it that Tyrell handled clean-up jobs. No questions asked. No paperwork left behind. Leon stepped toward the door, but Skylar pulled him back. "Don't open it," she said. "If they found us..." This wasn't random. Leon looked torn. He didn't want to believe that someone from his team had tracked them, especially not Tyrell. But deep down, he knew this wasn't a rescue mission. Tyrell's voice had sounded too calm, too rehearsed. Skylar grabbed her backpack from under the table. "There's another way out." He followed her through the narrow hall, into a back room, where the floorboards creaked over a hidden hatch. The exit led into an alleyway behind the house. Wet gravel, broken crates, darkness. Leon slipped once, catching himself on the wall. Skylar turned around and grabbed his hand without thinking. "You good?" He nodded. "Let's go." They ran. That night, the dynamic between them changed. They were no longer a captive and captor. They were fugitives, running from something bigger than either of them had expected. Because here's what neither of them had realized. Leon's kidnapping had exposed cracks in HeartCorp's walls, and someone on the inside wanted those cracks sealed, permanently. Tyrell wasn't working alone. There was a silent war brewing at the top of the company, and Leon had just become a threat. Over the next few days, they moved from safe house to safe house. Skylar had contacts, people who owed her favors, old friends from her brother's activist circle. Each one gave them shelter for a night or two, but the heat kept building. HeartCorp issued a press release, claiming Leon had been taken hostage by a mentally unstable woman. They painted Skylar as a criminal. They offered a $1 million reward for her arrest. Leon watched the news in disbelief. "They're trying to erase you." Skylar just laughed bitterly. "That's what they did to my brother." The tension between them grew heavier, but so did the trust. Leon made calls using encrypted phones. He spoke to old colleagues, people he used to doubt but now needed more than ever. He started connecting the dots. Bank transfers, blackmail trails, backdoor partnerships. Tyrell wasn't just acting out of loyalty. He was working for a secret board faction, trying to oust Leon and take control of HeartCorp. Everything was unraveling, and, in the middle of it all, Skylar's brother's name kept popping up. In old files, in deleted texts, even in a suspicious transfer, made just days before he vanished. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear. Her brother hadn't disappeared. He'd been silenced, and the person responsible wasn't Leon. It was someone far closer, someone Leon had trusted. It all came to a head one night in an abandoned storage facility just outside the city. A meeting had been set. Leon's last chance to confront the people trying to take him down. He wanted to bring the evidence. He wanted Skylar there. She refused at first, afraid it was a trap. But Leon looked her in the eyes and said, "You started this. You deserve to see how it ends." They entered the building together, and waiting in the shadows was the last person they expected, the man who held all the answers, the man they both thought was long gone. Skylar's brother, alive, and everything, every lie, every truth, every betrayal, was about to come crashing down. For a long moment, no one moved. Skylar's breath caught in her throat. Leon stood frozen beside her. The man in front of them, thin, scruffy, wearing a coat 2 sizes too big, looked nothing like the confident, principled brother she remembered. But the eyes were the same, sharp, tired, still burning with something fierce underneath. "Jace?" Skylar's voice cracked. He gave a small broken smile. "Hey, sis." Tears welled up in her eyes. But before she could move, Jace lifted a hand. "Wait, you can't be here long. They know." Leon stepped forward, trying to piece it together. "They said you disappeared. We thought—" "They tried to kill me," Jace said bluntly. "Tyrell's not just the muscle. He's running the whole operation. Offshore accounts, fake mergers, laundering dirty contracts through shell companies. When I got too close, I ran, faked a fire, changed my identity. I've been gathering proof ever since." Skylar's legs gave out, and she sat down on a crate, staring at her brother like she was seeing a ghost. "All this time, you didn't say anything." "I couldn't," Jace replied, kneeling beside her. "If I did, you'd be the next target." Leon paced the floor, the weight of it all pressing down. "They framed her, lied about my disappearance, took control of my company. We need to end this now." Jace nodded and pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket. "This has everything: emails, recordings, wire transfers. You take this public, it's over for them." But before they could plan their next move, a sudden crack echoed through the warehouse. Gunshot. They ducked behind crates as splinters flew. Skylar screamed Leon's name. He reached for her, shielding her with his body, as another bullet tore through the air. Tyrell had arrived, with 2 men and no intention of letting anyone leave alive. "This ends now." Tyrell's voice boomed across the space. "Give me the drive, and maybe I'll let you live." Leon stood slowly, hands up, eyes locked on Tyrell. "You were like family," he said, voice steady. "Why?" Tyrell scoffed. "You were weak. You ran the company with your heart. I run it with power." Skylar crawled toward the far end of it, the warehouse, gripping the flash drive. Jace covered her, yelling at Leon. "Stall him!" Leon took a step forward. "You won't get away with this." "I already have," Tyrell said, raising his gun. But before he could fire, Jace launched himself from the shadows, tackling one of Tyrell's men. The gun clattered across the floor. Skylar grabbed it and fired a warning shot into the air. Everyone froze. Leon moved fast, punching Tyrell square in the jaw and knocking him to the ground. The second guard bolted. It was over in seconds, but the echoes of the chaos stayed in the air. They tied Tyrell up and left the warehouse with the drive in hand. Leon's jaw was bleeding. Skylar's hands were shaking. Jace limped slightly from the scuffle, but they were all alive, and they had the truth. What followed was a whirlwind. Leon held a live press conference. He stood in front of cameras, beside Skylar and Jace, and exposed everything. His own kidnapping, the crimes of his company's inner circle, the lies used to paint Skylar as unstable. The flash drive data was handed to authorities. Tyrell was arrested within hours. Multiple executives were charged. HeartCorp's stock plummeted, but the public respected Leon for his honesty. He announced his resignation and vowed to rebuild the company from scratch, with Jace and Skylar at the head of the new ethics board. It wasn't a perfect ending. Nothing ever is. But it was real. Skylar and Leon didn't rush anything. After everything they'd been through, pain, betrayal, survival, they took it one step at a time. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they laughed at how their story began, with a kidnapping and a bowl of instant noodles. But through it all, they stayed close. Jace started a non-profit to protect whistleblowers. Leon quietly funded most of it. Skylar finally got her brother back, and in some strange twist of fate, found love where she least expected it. And Leon, the cold, rude billionaire who once thought feelings were a weakness, he ended up learning the hardest and most important lesson of his life. Power doesn't come from fear or control. It comes from standing up, even when you're scared, even when you're wrong, and choosing to do the right thing. So yeah, maybe she kidnapped him for 7 nights, but in the end, she set him free. And that is a story no one saw coming.